the important thing is to actually be able to decide what you want out of trading and make the right decision there, and then try and achieve that.
Two traders, Darren and Walter, pull back the curtain on profitable trading systems, consistent money management, and profitable psychological triggers. Welcome to the Two Traders podcast.
Welcome back, and if you haven't listened to part 1 of the interview with James, I would definitely do that. In this part, this is part 2, you are going to hear about the priest who trades for James's fund, the problem with all clients when you are trading someone else's money, a funny story about a Ferrari, the wildfire that almost burned down the private zoo, and how forex funds got a bad name and why this is. And then finally, you'll get the answer to the question, what is the big trap that most successful forex traders fall into? All this and more in part 2.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and you bring up a really good point here. Like, one of the things that people point to when they're trading and their trading's going well is, well, all I have to do is manage some money. I'll get my hands on some investors, and then that's really going to take off for me. But one of the forgotten things here is that those investors, if you're risking too much, which obviously means you're going to eventually hit some sort of drawdown, some sort of unlucky patch, along the way, they're more likely to pull out. If you're risking too much, they're the ones that are going to pull the rug out from underneath you. And you've got to remember that they often will say, your investors will often say, well, we want to risk this much. No, why don't you risk more? Why don't you do that? But then as soon as things turn bad, they're the first ones to say, okay, I want out, and that's one of the things you have to be wary of, is they don't really know what they want.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why my fund at the moment, which I say it's my fund, but it's a joint business venture between us and an annuity, we actually pay our traders a base salary. And you'll find amazing how much better they trade, knowing that they can pay their bills at the end of the day. Putting all the pressure to have them just earning on commission is not a good idea for a trading fund. And I learned that very quickly, because the first model I did with a couple of guys, I lost a lot of my good traders, and they only came back to work with me once I settled, to put in a base currency, we'll call it a base income really, for them, and a good one at that, and then everything on top was just bonuses. So they would rather earn less in commissions but have that secure salary. So yeah, it's been a learning curve for me on that way as well. But it was the annuity companies that said to me, people crave security. But if you can get that happy medium between the two with your fund, your traders will perform, and they've done extremely well. I can't take all the credit for my fund. It's a team effort, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. Okay, so all right, so you're at the point now where you're making good money at your job, and you're making enough money to buy basically your company. So that kind of sets you up for your trading, doesn't it? So at this stage, what's driving you? You're just trying to build up that account, really. I mean, you have your job, you have your business, and the trading is kind of on the side, which takes the pressure off, as Darren says. This is one of those smart things that traders do when they transition to full time. So what's going on now? You're just trying to build it up, or what's sort of on the horizon for you?
Well, for me, it's building the fund and the trust with the investors. So that's why one of the reasons why we joined up again with a B2B partner with financial advisors, trusted industry experts, and all the people we didn't have as traders. So at the moment, it's building the client base and the trust. We have set goals that we want to. I mean, really, my set goal is to get the fund to a point where basically my future generations will never have to work again. That's kind of what it is. It's a huge goal, but that's what I would like. And I would like them to get involved in that industry, not necessarily on a full-time basis, but on a part-time basis, to realize that you can be self-sufficient and you can be a self-made individual. And that's the most important thing, is having that residual income. But so for me at the moment really is building the client relationships and And yes, we do well as a fund, but it's more growing the techniques, documenting those techniques and research, and then sharing that knowledge. We haven't found yet a platform on how to share it. I mean, the only way I'm going to probably go through is your forum, to be honest with you, Walter. So we'll be talking at some point, I'm sure, where you get to come in and study some of my traders and see what makes them click as well. And it might be the environment that we put down. Because it's very interesting to get 6 successful traders in one room. It just doesn't happen very often. And a good, we've got a guy that's a priest working for us, and he doesn't make any money out of trading. He actually makes money, of course, for the fund, but he doesn't personally make any cash. All of it goes back to the church to build projects and schools and everything else. But he just loves it. It's like a drive and a competition for him. And I think that's wonderful. I mean, I wish I was less like that, but I still like my my creature comforts and things like that. But
yeah, you're the one that's sitting on a yacht right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a funny story about why you shouldn't buy a Ferrari very soon, but I've had one of those before, and it was a stupid idea. Ferrari, you buy them, you get fat, and then you can't get in the driver's wheel. Here's another one. You drive it round the corner and you spend more money servicing it than you do owning a $500,000 apartment in the city annually. So there are stupid expenditures, and I've actually got rid of them. I've gone back to being quite normal. I've gone from being extravagant to being normal, to realizing that I just think there is they make a market for the very wealthy in order to take their money, which is very clever, to be honest with you. And really, you're not getting dollar for dollar value, if you know what I mean. Not saying Ferrari is a horrible company in case you're a new investor in future, but Holden Commodore or Ford is just as good as any other car out there, if not better than some of those luxury cars. So,
They're a decent buy, James. They're a decent buy and hold investment, Ferraris. So your best bet is to buy one, put it in a garage, cover it up, and then let your kids sell it in 50 years' time, sort of thing.
Yeah, that sounds good. But I don't want to drive out and the wheels fall off or something, because the dread of Italian engineering. But I'll just say it was a nightmare. So within the first week of owning a second-hand Ferrari, because you can't buy them new in Australia, they're very difficult to procure, I probably spent $120,000 repairing it. Never again. That was a lesson to be learned. So,
wow, yeah, that's crazy. I had a friend actually, Darren, that did that. His friend at university, his older brother had a bunch of Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and that was it. He was just garaging them, and they also had all these exotic animals. And then there was a wildfire in a bushfire in California near their house, and so it was like this mad dash to it's exactly what you're saying, James. It was just, not only were we letting these birds loose out of their cages and all these exotic animals to hopefully they can survive the fire, but then it was like, are these cars going to work? Are we going to be able to get them out of here? It was pretty crazy. But yeah, so there's a lesson for all the traders out there who are aspiring to get their very own Ferrari. Just buyer beware, right, James?
Buyer beware, but sensible beware. I reckon first thing, pay off your mortgage, be sensible, put money away for the future, and grow your fund. Because the more money you have in your fund, the less effort you have to do as a trader. And people don't realize that. The bigger let's say you have $1 million in your fund, you actually have to take less trades per year to live normally and have a good lifestyle. You don't have to live $1 million lifestyle. You can, $500,000 lifestyle is fine. You know what I'm talking about there. Even living on $100,000 a year is fine. But the more equity you have, the less you have to trade. So you can pick better trades, make a good income out of it. But yeah, grow your nest egg, and then retire with a bigger nest egg. I wish I had listened to that sooner, because I would have not gone straight into it full time with just $500,000. I would have gone in with it a lot larger. amount, it would have made my life easier and quicker. But hindsight's really good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
tell us what are some of the other lessons? So when you first started transitioning from building your own account up to looking for investors, what are some of the other things that you ran into? Like before you've partnered up with the annuity where you're at now, what were some of those other sort of milestones that you pushed through that you thought you can look back now and say, okay, I see now that I realized one of the things you mentioned was that you were in negotiations with a company, and they were obviously big Optimal F fans. So they were asking you to risk much more per trade than you were comfortable with, and you pushed back there. But what are some of the other things that you also discovered as you were sort of looking for money to looking for investors and building up that profile?
Well, that's another thing as well. Because of the rap that the FX industry has, and portfolios, and JP Morgans have got a bad reputation, all the big companies. And I'm not being cruel. With the GFC, even though they made money, their names are all mud. Because people have this big hate of wealth and money in their psychology, it's very difficult to get investors. And at one point I was wondering if I was ever going to get any, because I used to get, you've been trading for 5 years, that's a joke. $500,000 isn't enough to have been developed in 5 years, even though you're compounding it. Is that performance any good? A JP Morgan can do better than that, which we all know is not true. They do about 20% a year. Well, they probably do a lot more, but what they do is they take all the money and give the customer only about 20%. But one of the biggest issues I had as well is you can't just run a trading fund. You've got to have an Australian financial services license. You've got to have people like financial counsellors. You've got to have the licensees. And these cost hundreds and thousands of dollars, with accountants and tax experts. So really we were at a point where we had to make a decision. Are we going to be a retail fund, or are we going to be a managed fund? And based on that decision-making process, we decided to join up with a larger company, because we just realized we were never going to grow as fast without that help and expertise.
Right. So one of the decision points that you came to was basically, look, if we partner up with somebody else, that's going to make it easier, both sort of financially from an infrastructure point of view, but also they're going to have access to the investors, and they're going to make that more of a streamlined process rather than us sort of out there, beating the pavement looking for our own investors. So it's kind of a, it's a symbiotic relationship, isn't it? Because they need you guys, because you're the traders that are going to turn that, multiply that money, and you sort of need them because they've got the infrastructure, they're all legitimate, and then also they've got access to investors who are looking for a place to put their money. Is that fair to say?
Exactly, and they've got the licenses, and they've got the trust in the industry. You remember, we're just an unknown entity to them.
Yeah, exactly. And so that, some people listening to this, Darren, are probably thinking, this sounds all a bit complex. Maybe this isn't really what I want to do. Maybe I don't necessarily want to have a situation where I've got this fund and I'm partnering up with another company and stuff like that. I mean, some people here just want to build their own money, or maybe they want to just get some money from friends or family or something like that, and they want to sort of multiply that, but they don't really want to go down the same path that James has gone here, right? I mean, some people, that's not really their goal, right, Darren?
Yeah, this is way the polar opposite of what I do, as with my trading. And I've got no ambition to build a fund, and maybe that's to do with our different upbringings. My family haven't been massively successful in any particular field, and so I don't feel any particular drive to do that. And I'm content to just kind of have my own personal experiences and that. And so I think I probably, even if I wanted to go ahead and do something like James has done, I think I would find it hard to do that. I just haven't got that drive. And that's fine as well, really. I mean, the important thing is to actually be able to decide what you want out of trading and make the right decision there, and then try and achieve that.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point that James is making here is, you've got to decide what you want out of trading. If it is really to pay your bills and sort of get you into a better income bracket, then you got to think strategically, as James has said, about how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that if you've only got a $25,000 trading account? Really what you need to do is you need to build up your trading account, build up a little nest egg so that you can live 12 months, at about the same level you're at with your job. And that really is going to take the pressure off. And one of the biggest mistakes I see, and I'm sure James would concur here, is that people trying to go pro too early, and that pressure can really affect your situation because, as you say, James, you don't when your account gets to a certain size, you don't really need that many trades to make your life, sort of sustain what you've got and even grow your account a bit. It's the pressure is off, isn't it?
It certainly is, and that's one of the reasons why I chose to cap our fund at a certain rate. I won't go into how much it is because they're very strict about confidentiality, but we got to a point where it wasn't necessary to grow any bigger. The returns were substantial and we were happy with them. I think there is a point of need and greed, and that's very important with trading, is that you really should build that little nest egg up and make your life a whole lot easier. Don't just jump into it. And another thing is, you can definitely tell the real funds from the fake ones if you've gone through this process of licensing and business-to-business partnership and regulations and audits. Here we go. I mean, for an investor, I need someone to invest a minimum of $2 million in our fund because of the cost of onboarding them is massive. So that's when you know if a fund out there is tickling your fancy without any proven evidence. And that's something that's very important. All our investors that join our fund get a copy of our records before they make that final decision, including all of the transactions we've made and growth. So there's a lot of misconception about the costs of running a fund versus a retail fund, and also, like you mentioned as well, don't jump into that industry early. Just do it part-time. Grow $1 million before you start retire, and then you can truly enjoy trading for what it is. You don't have that pressure anymore because you can take 2 or 3 trades a year and be quite happy.
Exactly. Yeah. So interesting, James. So let me ask you, what sort of things do you think that, knowing what you know now, you sort of made mistakes along the way? Like, for example, some people here are thinking, wow, James, that's crazy. I don't need to have a $2 million investor. I'll just take someone if they got $100,000. Or, what are some of the things that you can say, okay, well, I made a mistake there? Because the sort of the trading side of it, I can see why you've done well. You spent a lot of time back testing. I know for a fact you spent a whole lot of time with forex tester, and forex tester is the tool that a lot of traders I know who are successful point to and say, yeah, that was really helpful. But what are some of the other things that you learned in terms of managing money, finding clients, hiring traders? What are some of the other things you've learned?
Well, another thing you get to learn very quickly is that making money in the industry is great. Excuse me. But so many people have done it before you and done it a whole lot better than you. So you're being compared very quickly. You get compared against traders that have made $1 million on a day on 50% risk, but they don't understand what 50% risk is. So this is why we use people like Challenger and the annuity side of it to explain to investors exactly what risk management is, so we don't really have to do all of that. We just trade properly. If I had a choice whether I'd started the fund, I may not have. It's a lot of work. It's like a full-time job, really. And even as a trader, it's a full-time job, but this is pretty full-on. I probably spend about 40 of the hours of my week working, because as you've got to manage portfolios, people, HR issues, you've got to deal with investors attempting to sue you to release their funds. That's something people don't talk about. That's why you need to have a minimum of 2 million, and you need to lock them in for a certain period legally. Otherwise, they try and acquire their funds when life goes pear-shaped, and it affects the fund's performance overall. So there's all those little bits and pieces. These are things you wouldn't think of as a normal person. You wouldn't think that someone would sue you for making them sugar loads of money and be ungrateful about it.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Yep.
But it happens. It happens. If you get a big enough company or big enough investors, they will sue you to release their money early, which is insane, because they're not letting their money mature into, you know, what it could be. So yeah, trust me, there's some darker sides to investing that aren't good. That's for sure.
Yeah, it reminds me of The Big Short, Darren. Remember in The Big Short when I forget the guy's name or whatever, Barry or whoever it was, and he's like, you know, he writes that email and he goes, "Here's your 400 million or whatever. You're welcome."
That's very true.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in how James finds his traders, and do you find that you have like a high turnover of traders, or have you found you know, a way of selecting those? I presume that they all trade their own strategy. You know, have you found like reliable things to look for that pick out a trader that's going to be consistent and successful in the long run? How do you go about that?
Well, for Recruitment Point, I mean, to begin with, I tried to make little clones of James. That doesn't work. Even my brother was trading and he failed miserably at it, and there was a lot of upset and tears over that, and I had to tell him he couldn't trade, and in the end he gave up on the industry, and that was hard for him. But what I learned very quickly is you've got to let every trader be unique. There's elements of things that you would teach them: risk management, money management, you know, psychology. But the actual trading system doesn't really matter as long as it's consistently highly probable at the end of the day that it's going to make a turnover. So letting go was the hardest thing for me, because originally we had a high turnover rate because we were trying to clone traders, which was a mistake. I will admit that was the biggest mistake. Don't clone traders. And of course we had a family member in the mix of that, which wasn't very good. But by letting traders grow on themselves within a little framework and make the mistakes with smaller accounts, and then they obviously get more responsibility as they get better, was the best way to go.
That's it for part 2. In part 3, you will see the advice that James would give his younger self, the perfect time for traders to take a break and take time away from trading, and how James has incorporated this into his fund with his team of traders, what potential investors look for when deciding whether or not to give you money, how James's fund made a whole lot of money while other funds were getting blasted during the famed historical Brexit vote in the UK, why James uses a slow method of trading and why traders call it a slow method, why your handwriting could determine your financial future, which is kind of weird, and why Darren would be frustrated if he was trading James's slow method of trading. All this and more in part 3 of this interview. See you soon.